Donna here from Am.A-line Collections. We're on episode 6. I have the wonderful couple of Eric and Jimmy with me this evening.
Hello.
So we're here. It's Pride Month. I know it's the end of Pride Month, but we're happy to even have this conversation. So again, we're also talking about their experiences and also just how they're doing with the pandemic.
Yeah.
How's life, guys?
It's
going.
It's going.
Yeah. It's been a trying few months.
It's been a very trying year.
True, because your wedding got delayed. You had to put it off.
And it got delayed again.
So when are you looking at now?
Probably spring of next year
It's
now.
gonna be spring of next year.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's all right. So, would you like to tell a little bit about yourself, your background, how life is, what experience sticks out to you the most recently, even with tumultuous time?
You want to start? Or do you?
I guess, yeah, sure. No, well, I actually grew up in Northern California, and I came to Virginia in high school, which was kind of cool. It was a nice kind of like change around and just kind of adapting to a new situation in life and things like that. And come from the West Coast, coming to the East Coast was a little rough, but
I can imagine.
But it was fun. It was nice to like make a new name for myself, a new start, and things like that. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't until like college and things like that that I came to know myself a little bit more, actually, and realized more about myself and that I was actually a gay American. I don't know, I guess, yeah. Like I was, I don't know, I'm so awkward. I'm such an introvert. So.
It's okay. I mean, well, I have my days. But yeah, I'm sure it was definitely different. I mean, it's California and then
Coming to Virginia.
Yeah.
It was a big change. Like, I know now, like, I could have always talked to my family and my parents and such, but I always just felt like I was alone a little bit. And it wasn't until, like, college and stuff that I realized that I'm not really alone out there. And, like, there are more people like me that just, I don't know, that just are artistic and introverted and just want to share their heart and soul with people. And I mean, then I ended up meeting Jimmy after college, which was kind of amazing. We met on an online site, and from there we were like chatting for a month or so, and then we decided to meet in person. And just that fingers crossed moment, like hopefully he's not a catfish, or I hope he's actually a real person. But like, I mean, we've been talking like on FaceTime and things like that, so I knew he was a real person. I mean, that would have been a lot to fabricate and things like that, so I had some security there. And just getting to meet Jimmy, like, it was one of those moments too that I was like, oh my gosh, like, everything clicks. Like, this is, why was I so afraid of being myself for so long and just putting myself out there? And I guess, I know I feel that still pretty much every day, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those great things that it's great to let love be love, and just after finding like lots of personal demons, things like that throughout my life, like that, I'm so comfortable and happy to be where I am now. And,
absolutely.
I mean, COVID or not, like.
True. And so lucky, blessed that you guys can be together, especially with craziness.
Yes. True.
So what about you, Jimmy?
I come from the beautiful Garden State of New Jersey. I'm actually from South Jersey, Cape May area. And I moved here part-time to do college at Shenandoah. And then I decided I'm going to continue on with my master's because, you know, it was either continue on with very little debt or take a year off and never go back to school. So I went straight through. Looking back at it now, probably not the best decision. But you know what? I have 2 degrees. So, like, that's all I can say. Like Eric, I didn't find myself until college. I was always the kid in high school that was the ginger, fat kid who, you know, got bullied a lot but never really spoke up for himself until high school. And I was also bullied by like a lot of teachers and students, which is something that a lot of people don't realize happens in the high school system. Like sometimes it's the adults that your tax dollars pay that sometimes bully you. And so when I came to college, I started finding myself, I didn't come out as gay until I was 20, because I come from a very background. I was Catholic. I'm considered nowadays the fallen Catholic because I left the Catholic Church when I was 16. I left the Catholic Church because it was kind of like bringing down the mood here. My mother passed away, and the church was such a big part of my life. People thought I was going to be a priest, and I was like, no. No, because you can't get married. You're married to God, and it's like, no. And that wasn't my life for me. I thought I was going to go, go to college or go off to New York and via Smash get my first Broadway lead and win my Tony Award by 25. No.
Is this Glee?
Yeah, no. So then I was in college and I decided to come out, and I had a great. It was a pretty interesting experience because my friends knew, but I didn't know. And it was very interesting. They were trying so hard to read me in the right direction, and then I guess it was one of those things where I was just like, why am I lying to myself? Why am I trying to fit this mold? So it was around that year of college that I really I think I was the essential, the subtle art of not giving a fuck before the book ever came out. And being an extrovert, it was very easy for me to just be like, nah, that's just not me. And then I met Eric. So for the kids back then, there were only 2 places you could find people: Plenty of Fish or OkCupid. Because it was very limited. We didn't have Grindr was just starting, but we didn't have Tinder, we didn't have Bumble, we didn't have Coffee Meets Bagel, we didn't have it was just either Plenty of Fish, Match, or OkCupid, which is where we met. And through Eric, I realized that we had a lot in common. We both come from religious backgrounds. He was also Catholic and Buddhist at the same time.
Yeah, it was kind of cool growing up because I'm from a mixed family. So my mom grew up actually Japanese Buddhist, and then my dad grew up Irish Catholic, and so we celebrated both sides and kind of went to mass, and we also went to celebrations and things like that, and temple and things like that as well. So it was really neat to see have a good perspective of the world, I felt from the East and the West a little
Definitely.
bit. And kind of helped me to appreciate both sides of my background. So,
yeah. And through our knowing of each other, I still consider myself a very spiritual person versus a religious person. I still go to church, even though it's for monetary reasons of singing every Sunday, but I still get my spiritual fix when I'm in a church choir. But through Eric, I sort of definitely mellowed out since college of a lot of things, but it's also together we went through a big tumultuous parts of our lives. He went since meeting him at 22, he's been a bulk of my 20s, and I'm going to be turning 30 next year. And it's been really interesting to have someone, and it's an interesting time of which we live because literally 2 years into our relationship, gay marriage became legal. And I never thought that was in the cards. For me personally, I knew I always wanted to get married, but I thought, the minute I turn gay, it's not going to longer be, anything. I'm going to hell. So it's all whatever. It's never going to be seen in the eyes of the state or in the world of the U.S. as a true relationship. I mean, I have an uncle on my deceased mom's side who was in a partnership for God knows how many years, and growing up he was Uncle Danny and his roommate Brad. At 13, I finally told my mother, Ma, I know who his roommate is. You don't gotta say roommate. I was trying to be the PC way. And it's just so wonderful to now live in this world where I can finally marry the person that I love, and it was always interesting. But the funniest part was the minute that it happened, they're like, are you guys gonna get married now? We're we're only 2 years in. Give us some time.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually kind of cool though, because we had so many people just send us personal messages through text or emails or things like that. Oh my gosh, we're so excited for you to maybe one day you can get married, and I guess that wasn't never something that I thought was an option, really. I mean, unless we did something special or something like that.
Yeah.
But actually having that, it's a big thing. To have a partner in life, and like for all reasons, like for love, for spiritualism, like just connecting with a person and just being able to call them your spouse, like to call my husband it's a great thing. Like I mean, I can't wait to really say it truly, like once we have the final wedding. Like, the wedding ramp plan F or C or
I think at this point we're on plan G because Corona be trying things.
It's gone down the road a little bit.
Just be trying things.
Miss Rona be trying things in my life.
Yeah.
So, being that, you know, it's been postponed and everything, and, you know, we're still now going through, again, more protests and Black Lives Matter. As far as your experiences growing up with each of your background, has there been a moment that, like, has stood out that has hurt you and that maybe you've spoken out about or you haven't, and now is the time to speak?
Yeah. I mean, like for me, I've always, like, for seeing my parents and things like that, I've been very lucky to, like, be able to see a mixed couple, like in the 90s and stuff, and they made it work. They're from very, very different backgrounds, and love is love, and they made it work. And for me, like, that's what I try and go into everything with. It's just kindness and love, and it's hard sometimes though. Like for me, my personal background and identity, like it was so hard to find where I stood, I guess, on the line. Like I felt like I always had to choose one side or the other. Like I'm either Asian American or I'm like white American. And I always felt so blessed looking up to my parents and just seeing them as a mixed couple, and just seeing that love is love, and that, like, go through everything with just love and kindness, and it'll work out. Like everyone will accept everybody eventually. And I know, I guess that's a little bit of like hippy dippy California coming up too, but I mean that's how I feel. And I don't know, for me it was really hard growing up, just trying to find where I stood on the spectrum too, like between like being was I white, was I Asian, like where did I fall? And I mean it's still kind of a struggle a little bit sometimes too, but it's just like I want to celebrate both sides of my background. And it was great that my parents really did try to kind of pull that out of us. Like one of the cool things is in my name. My name is Eric Daniel Kazumi, and Kazumi is actually a family name. It was actually my grandfather's name, but since they came to the U.S., well, they were born here in the United States, my grandparents, and they wanted, my great-grandparents wanted my grandparents to have very American names, and so like George and Alice and things like that, but everyone had their name for their middle name that was pulling them back to like their roots and their background. So my grandfather's name was George Kazumi Matsumoto, and so I always treasure that, having that as part of my middle name, is because it's looking back to the past and kind of just kind of pushing that forward and just celebrating it a little bit too. And I guess I'm very lucky to be part of like a minority group and things like that that was always looked at as being like, I think it was Roosevelt, I'm not sure, but it's called Asians and stuff, the model minority and stuff, which is a terrible thing, but it's always been like, I am lucky, but like I guess growing up in random things too, like my dad always did push forward to like, oh, make sure like you click this box on like a test or something, like that you're Asian American or Pacific Islander or something like that, just because it'll give you more of a like launching point and things like that for your life. And I don't know, just like, I guess that was a little bit of like a shame too that he was like trying to put in me, like, just don't embrace the white part of your heritage, but embrace just the Asian and things like that. But I mean, it's so great now too, like to see that there's actually a box that is mixed. Yeah. I mean, moving forward and things like that. But I guess, I don't know, there's a lot of emotions that I feel about like with everything that's going on in the world right now, and just like, why is it taking so long, like for people just to accept others, and just that it matters. Black lives matter, and it's I don't know how to really it comes into words. And
I can tell you're passionate. Yeah. No, which is fine. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are passionate about various subjects, and it's good because passion is what drives change. So thank you for being passionate. Thank you for feeling all your emotions. Because you're a person, and that's what makes a person,
Right.
not a robot having feelings.
Exactly. So I guess I mean I grew up obviously in a white home in the north, and I was always taught growing up to always look at a person's personality and not the color of their skin, which is how I've always lived my life. And even before I met Eric, I had talked to various coat of many colors, I guess you could say, of people, and I'm the only person in my family that is in a relationship or, getting married to a person of color. And he is half Japanese, and I'm the only person in there. In my whole group of family. Oh no, I take that back. My older stepsister married a, his heritage is he's half Peruvian, Alex. Alex's last name is Rivera. So both my sister and I are marrying into people of people who are mixed race, and it's very interesting. The minute that you become in a relationship with a person who is, whether they're mixed or fully on like a person of color, your eyes open a lot. And when I met him, I had never known about the Japanese internment camps because they don't teach that in our history books here. Because we only focus on, in World War II, we had Pearl Harbor, we had Pearl Harbor, we had Nazi Germany, the Jews were in the camp, the Jews were in the concentration camps. But what was happening over here was we did exactly the same thing with the Japanese people. We took away their land, we took away everything that they owned and put them in these internment camps. Now they weren't, for the sake of murder. Right. They were for
kind of like isolated.
Isolate them so that they could all be kept in one place. Because as a country in the U.S., we were attacked by the Japanese, and the American people felt a certain way. It's kind of mirroring a fact of what happened after 9/11. And the 9/11 attacks, a lot of Muslim people, people who had like a name that was of Muslim descent or Pakistani or Afghani descent, they were ostracized. They were. It was basically history repeating itself with that. So I had never known about it, and he actually told me a lot about his grandfather and grandmother being in those camps, and it was very eye opening, and it opened that to me spoke profoundly, because then that's how I learned that you need to always read everything. You can't always depend on the history books, because sometimes the history books skim over a couple of things, And I love history. I'm a history nerd. The fact that I live in Virginia is a big deal for my family because Civil War and stuff. But it was one of those things that I really loved, and also being in a mixed relationship, especially with a person of Asian descent, it's really interesting to see some of the things that you never would think twice until it happened in front of you. So like one of the things that comes to mind is when we started dating, we loved to go into DC a lot. And we would get on the metro, and the minute we get off the metro, either someone who was Asian or a white person would come straight to my, now fiance and say, "Excuse me, do you know where Chinatown is?" Like
straight up assuming. Now he does
maybe
know
I'm
where
very approachable. I don't know.
Now,
but if you're from this area, then okay, maybe.
He did know where Chinatown was, to his credit. But it was just like, okay, you just assume. And there were like other people around us. So I finally told his group of friends, and they never believed me until it happened one day. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, Jimmy, you were so right." I was like, "Yeah, guys, like it happens. Like it's." So that was one of the first things that stuck out. I was like, "Well, why would you specifically, like there's so many people around us, why would you go to him?" And I started looking around, and Eric goes, "It's okay, it happens all the time." I was like, "What? Are you kidding me?" So it was just one of those things that I think that was one of the first like steps that I realized that I was like, gotta look at myself here and see why things are going on. And in terms of the protest, I commend people for standing up to what they believe in, because we're the aftermath of Pride. The reason why we celebrate Pride is because of the Stonewall riots. So pride would never be a thing without the Stonewall riots and the protests of people, you know, from Marsha P. Johnson or Sylvia Rivera. And I believe they should stand up to what they believe in. I always say the phrase, until Black Lives Matter, all lives do not matter, because I do not like the phrase all lives matter, because it's, right now they're not. It's just the simple idea of that. And I know also another thing that comes to mind was, I used to live in Winchester, which there is a Mason-Dixon line in Virginia as well. There's a part that when you cross a certain point in Virginia, when you get to like the Winchester area,
close to West Virginia,
there is a moment where you are in a very conservative area. And I remember I was living with a black woman at the time, and we went to go to the Alamo to pick up her boyfriend at the time. And we were running a little late, which is sometimes happens because he was dragging his feet on us whether or not he wanted to go. So we went and got him. He was across the other side of town. And to get out of our neighborhood, there were 2 stop signs, and I was in the front seat, and we did both of those stops, and then we ran around a bend. And around this bend, there was another stop sign. Before we could even get to that stop sign, a cop stopped us. After we had went around the bend. We had done 2 complete stops. She didn't do a California roll. She didn't do anything like that. And the cop stops. He shines his light on her, says, "Can I see your license and registration?" Great. Shines his light on me. He goes, "How you doing, sir?" I'm like, "I'm doing fine, sir. Can I ask you why you stopped my friend?" He goes, "Oh, well, she didn't stop." I said, "You mean the 2 stop signs there by our apartment?" He goes, No, the one around the bend." I said, "There's no stop sign around the bend, sir." He went back to his car, gave back her license, said, "Have a nice night." Now, I may have been born in the dark, but it wasn't last night that there was something fishy going on. Either he was trying to fill a quota or saw, you know, a black woman in the front seat and needed to come save the poor little white boy in the front seat. Like, it was something that I realized that, like, oh, because growing up in the North, it's not as prominent as that. It probably is, but I just was blind to it because of being sheltered, I guess. But when I was living on my own in the South, below the Mason-Dixon line, it was very interesting to notice that. And that's why I've become very vocal about how I feel about this situation. And it's pro all of everything, because we need to speak up. We need to say when something's being wrong.
Absolutely. That's exactly why we're doing what we're doing.
Yes.
But yeah, I just love you guys because y'all are amazing people in general. And you know, like we have these discussions quite often. Like, people are people, love is love.
Love is love.
And I'm just happy that you guys have made it this far. You're almost there.
We're so close.
Almost there. I don't know. Do you have any other remarks that you guys want to share? I know, like, Virginia is a very historical place, and if you grow up in Virginia, I actually had this conversation with my cousins about history, learning history, and if you come from, like, California, for example.
So, with history class and stuff there, in California, we were going to be in the second, like, half of the year was going to be focused on, like, Civil War and things like that. And I ended up moving to Virginia. And so when I moved to Virginia, 8th grade curriculum out here was world history.
Yes.
And so I ended up like, oh wow, like, is there any way I could take it? And they're like, no. And then I just jumped right back into world history. I was like, well, I pretty much learned this, but I kind of skipped over anything that happened like significant for like U.S. history. And it wasn't until I took like AP government and then IB history and things like that I got to learn a little bit more about like, oh wow, like we totally skipped over like Civil War and like all this important stuff that happened like a little bit more recently, and it's not world history, it's the US history and such.
Yeah.
So I felt kind of behind in that a little bit, and there's a lot of self-study to like catch up, I felt.
Yeah, because it was like, you know, Jimmy mentioned the internment camps, and like I remember learning about it a little bit, you know, I don't remember which class it was, but, you know, from the beginning of time you come into school in Virginia. Like, you cover a lot of U.S. history, you cover a lot of, and like, we're very fortunate here to learn a lot of this stuff. But, you know, because we're a history state, you know, we're going to go through these things. Whereas if you come from New Jersey, if you come from Pennsylvania, you may miss completely certain things.
But I think I know a little bit more than y'all about the California
I can
rush.
believe that.
No, and I can attest to the whole if you come from New Jersey, because my school system, they've changed it now since I graduated, but it was freshman year you took U.S. History 1, sophomore year you took World History, which was you learned everything from like Neanderthals to like now of what's going on in the world, and then you took U.S. History 2. So U.S. History 1 was from like the colonies to probably it would stop at Reconstruction, and then US 2 was Reconstruction to today. So when I took it, we had 3 levels. There was AP and honors, college prep, which was just like your regular, and then general that we called it, which was just like a slower pace. So I decided my junior year, because it was only offered to juniors, to take AP history. Well, because I took AP history, you had to then start back from the beginning of colonialism all the way to today's time. And actually, it was right about the counterculture movement is where everything then started blurring a little bit, because then we had to focus on the AP exam, which actually my document-based question was on counterculture movement, which was amazing. So it was just like fresh in my mind. So I was like, thank you for that 3, because I remember that part. But it's interesting because we like skimmed over a lot of things, mainly a lot with like World War II and like going on here in the U.S. and also like a little bit of the Korean War. Like that stuff was foggy. So I learned a lot of my history from just reading, and I'm a firm believer in, you know, reading every article you can, reading any book you can, or even just indulging in the arts. Film can sometimes get it right and sometimes it can get it wrong. So there's a lot of films out there, musicals, like I always still say, you know, if you really don't know about the Founding Fathers, go watch Hamilton, because they kind of does like this, it's like Schoolhouse Rock for adults. You know, it's very much Schoolhouse Rock for adults. And I'm a firm believer in doing everything you can. I love going to the museum. One of my favorite museums we go to every time is the American History Museum, which they do have everything from, you know, they have the actual counter from the infamous diner, from the sitting, and they also have, you know, the actual Star Spangled Banner that the poem is based off of. You can't take a picture of it because it's in like a really dark lit room for fear of like your preservation. Disintegrate. Which I'm like, but then there's that light shining on it that you know. But it's one of my favorite museums to go to, and because history is very important. I think you need to learn it in order to learn from everybody's mistakes, or learn from what was, you know, good about a lot of things, or also what was just, you know, plain fucked up. Because we can't rewrite it. We can never rewrite history, but we can admit that we were wrong and move forward and figure out how we can not create those issues. You know, and there's and in terms of, you know, LGBTQ plus community, there's a lot of literature now. There's a lot of films and documentaries about everything. I always like recommend, one of the ones I recently just watched was The Life and Death of Marsha P. Johnson, who was the transgender black woman who threw the first stones at Stonewall. Her life was very interesting, and the documentary, I knew about 98% of what the documentary was talking about, but it was very interesting to also then come in and know other things that I didn't realize was happening. Like, the part of it is to investigate whether or not she was murdered, because she died very tragically in 1992, and it was very, very sudden. Like, she drowned, and it was very sad, and they thought it was a murder, but it turns out it might have been, you know, an actual homicide, because she was running away from something. Because of a lot of people don't realize that LGBT organizations were connected to the mob. Because if you wanted something done, you got the mob to help you out. Because they kind of controlled everything. And there's other things too. Another great, documentary we watch is the life of Harvey Milk, and also the film Milk, starring Sean Penn. That was the first film I watched in high school. That was very revolutionary. Like, I didn't know about anything about Harvey Milk because they don't teach that in your high school's curriculum. They don't teach that anywhere about LGBTQ history.
Yeah.
And he was one of the first people to stand there, and he became the first openly gay councilman in the city of San Francisco, and was against Prop 6, which at the time was, firing people for being gay, which now in 2020 has become illegal thanks to the Supreme Court, which is crazy that it took almost 40 to 50 years for that to finally become
Reality.
a reality, because that's what Harvey Milk was fighting back in the 1970s before he was untimely assassinated. And there's a lot of other things too, and I do not recommend the film Stonewall because it doesn't give you a great representation of it. But if you like a great fictional story of a historical event, go ahead. But there's a lot of people that don't like the film, but it's very interesting. And the other one I also recommend is about, for the transgender, it's called Disclosure. It's about transgender in the media, and about, the famous episode from Dirty Sexy Money where we had the first transgender woman be a lead role and they changed her voice, which was very interesting back in the day. I'm a firm believer in reading and arts.
Yes. Black History Museum's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
I have not gone yet.
I have not finished it. I went and I only completed maybe 2.5 floors. Like, it's insane. There's so much there that you can see, listen to. Oh my gosh.
I have not
Just
gone
go
yet,
resort.
and it's on my to-do list to go because I haven't had it. Well, life's been kind of hectic and now we really can't go anywhere.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
even beforehand, life got a little hectic for both of us. That we both had made it a point that we said we really wanted to go because we kept passing by it when it was under construction when we would go into DC, and
Because we're both big history buffs too. Like, one of our favorite things is that we're in Virginia and there's so many cool historical homes and things like that. So it's really cool to go there and actually see how the narrative is changing in some of the places too and such. We recently went to Montpelier, James Madison's home, and it was really cool to see all the things they've excavated over the years and the changes that to the framework of how the tale's presented and things like that too. And it was really eye-opening.
And even at Monticello, there's now a whole section where you can go in Monticello because Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, which not a lot of people know that there was a little clause deleted from the Declaration of Independence, or else it would have never been unanimously passed about freeing the slaves. The Declaration of Independence, and he still owned slaves for a time until he freed them ultimately. But Monticello touches on a lot of bases, and they still keep the slave quarters up. Whereas in Montpelier, they're pretty much they were pretty much gone because of what happened to the property. But it's very interesting to see how much the narrative has changed and how today's society views those founding fathers. Yes, they did a lot of good, but there were a lot of things they also did that was underneath the rug, pretty shady. But yeah, definitely, I'm very much, and it's nice to have a museum like the African American Museum that's a great place to go to that talks about a poignant subject other than the Holocaust Museum, which I love, but you need to have a strong stomach and you need to be in the right frame set of mind. And when I went, I was not in the right frame set of mind because I almost threw up. But it was it's very important to go to those places because you need to learn. You just need to learn.
Eric, do you have any suggestions as books, movies, history, what to check out?
Yeah, actually, I'm always trying to like learn and educate myself more and further. And actually, there's this really cool book that I ended up picking up, and I'm gonna read it this month. But it's actually The Deviance War, and it's about the homosexual in the United States and things like that, and just history, and like I'm very much looking forward to reading it and just learning more too. And I guess that's one of the things that I've been looking forward to hopping on and reading and checking out now. And just like for me, it's really great to go to, like Jimmy said, museums and things like that too are just so powerful. And like actually one of the things that stands out to me like recently in the past like 5 years or so is I love the National Portrait Gallery. It's like one of my favorite places. And it was really heartwarming because there was a show there that was about folks who were mixed race, and they were Asian and like English, Irish, like kind of blends and things like that. And it just felt like a place that I belonged. And I was like, oh my gosh, like there's artwork for this, and it feels so good to be represented.
Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot more recommendations, I guess, other than just I love finding out people's stories and things, and just check out, like, talk to people and just find out their stories and what makes them tick and things. And you could be pleasantly surprised and things, like just diving deeper into like your family and friends and things like that. And for me, that's a huge learning point because you're getting a first-hand account. Like I was so lucky in high school to be able to talk to my grandmother before dementia and things set in, and talk to her about her experience, like the internment camps and things. And that was like never something that was ever brought up, but I made it a point to bring it up and just talk to them and just get her experience and her feelings and everything like that, and just talking to my mom about it too, and just learning so much about my own family that just was so interesting. And I don't know, just people are fascinating, and just talk to people. And I don't know, for me it's always just connect and find reasons. And I don't know, I guess one of the things that makes me think of too is just talking to my mom, finding about my grandfather, and he was actually part of the Go for Broke campaign. So they were, him and his family, his brothers and things like that, were in the internment camp, but they did the, it's been written a lot about, but the test of allegiance and things like that, where it had all these really hard questions that sometimes there was no right answer, but it was basically pledging your allegiance to the United States of America. And if you got through and things like that, like my grandfather actually, he fought for the United States in the war, because he saw himself as an American. And I don't know, that was a really cool thing that I found out about my family. And I'm so sad I never got to have that conversation with my grandfather about that, but being able to learn it secondhand from like his family members and my mom and grandmother and things like that was just a fascinating experience.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah, just be surprised by the people that you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
With a smile, Jimmy. Well, that's all the questions I have for you, unless you had any last remarks.
No, I guess for me the takeaway is just love is love, and just enjoy the company of others, and just, I don't know, find peace in like a very hard time, and just make sure that you realize that everyone has a story.
Everybody has a story, and everybody has, their... And always just be kind, because everyone's going to have their opinion. Their opinion is not wrong, but it's also not saying that their opinion is also right too, because that's what's the beauty of our country is. We come from a country where our opinion matters, and our opinion is open-minded. Like, we can sit here and have these conversations, and yes, we're very like-minded, which makes the conversation very pleasant. But there's also those times where you have a conversation with someone that it's not the same right frame of mind as you. So you have to also just be kind and know that, there's a reason behind why they're thinking what they're thinking. I had a conversation recently with somebody that it was very nice because he wanted to know about a lot of things, and he felt comfortable coming to me about it and wanted to ask and talk. So it was very interesting. And again, to quote Lin-Manuel Miranda, love is love. Love is love. Love is love. Love is love. Let it be this. Let love shine through, and just. I know it sounds very heavy dippy of us to say it, but they were feeling something at that point, and we're coming off of it's just one of those things that you gotta live by.
Absolutely. Well, thank y'all for joining me and
Thank you.
agreeing to speak.
Absolutely.
I love hearing y'all's story. It's very heart touching.
And any topic you want us to talk about, we'll come and talk.
All right.
I love talking. I'm from Jersey. We like to sit with our coffee and talk.
Jay's the talker of the two.
That's okay.
Well, bye.